So there wasn't really a ton that happened in this chapter, however we did find out that 1 berry is equivalent to 10,000 X-tolls in Skypiea. That's good.
One Piece Chapter 242, Class 2 Criminals.
Well, hello, my brothers and sisters of the Nerd Nation. I, as always, am Jim, here to bring you another review on the awesome and awe-inspiring tale of One Piece. Our last chapter, of course, really saw us with things ending up over there, with Nami racing back to try to warn the Straw Hats of kind of their impending doom as far as being labeled as these trespassers. And then, of course, we were introduced very briefly to McKinley, Captain McKinley, and the White Berets as they were, kind of going to head off Luffy and the crew down by the beach. So that's where things left off. That's where things pick up. And to tell you the truth, there's not a ton going on in this chapter, so we'll probably cover it a little bit quicker than usual. I say that, and then who knows, it'll still wind up being a 10 or 12 minute review. So / me talking about nothing. But what winds up happening is it starts out, and McKinley and the group are actually crawling across the beach towards them for some unknown reason. And they get up as they get there, and they're like, "Hesso, hesso," to Conus and Pagaya. And anyway, and Luffy's the only one that's on the beach, of course. Everybody else is on the Going Merry, and they're like urging Luffy, "Hey, let's get going," right? So he winds up telling them, he comes upon them and finds out almost immediately, figures out that these are actually the criminals, the criminal trespassers, and Luffy's like, "What are you talking about? We're not criminals," and he's like, "Oh yeah, you are. Amazon took a picture of you on your way up and this and that, with the picture dial, And, because they're talking about how they got to get Nami and everything else. So then it goes and it shows on the ship, and it's like, oh, yeah, and they're like, wait, hold on a second. And then they remember about the whole, Robin reminds them about hey, we had to pay 1 billion X-tolls per person, to come up here, and we didn't pay that or whatever, right? And then Usopp's like, that old snitch. So anyway, we wind up getting this Captain McKinley goes and he says, but it's okay. Don't worry about it. Just chill. It's only a class 11, felony or class 11, whatever the hell he calls it. Basically a class 11 crime, right? And don't worry about it. You can still, everything will still be fine. You just have to pay the fine, and then you can go about your day as tourists, right? And they're like, okay, fine. Why don't you tell us that? What's this fine all about? And he's like, well, it's 10 times the original amount, so 10 billion X-tolls per person, so that'd be 70 billion X-tolls. And they're like, what? And then Usopp's like, how much is that in berries? And he's like, oh, you Blue Sea people that use berries. All right, well, 1 berry is equal to 10,000 X-tolls. So Robin goes, and this is another reason why I like her. She's like a calculator, and I'm pretty good with math too a lot of times, whether I like to be or not. But she just goes and spits it out, and she's like, that's 7 million berries. And they're like, what? 7 million? That's crazy, And he's like, hey, you should have paid the original entrance fee, which would have been 700,000 berries. You would have been fine and good to go, So they're like, we don't have that type of money. We're not paying that, We got to get going. Screw this guy. We got to go get Nami. So they're about to go and take off and get Nami, and then all of a sudden Nami comes cruising up right on the waiver, and Nami's like, oh man, I hope they're okay, but there's somebody already there, and she's talking in her head. And as she gets up closer, she's telling Luffy, because Luffy's like, I'll kick your ass, basically, to the Captain McKinley. And she's like, no, Luffy, don't do anything, And Luffy's like, what are you talking about? They want us to pay a fine. And Luffy goes, 70 million berries, right? So either they screwed something up in there, or it's just Luffy and his dim-wittedness when it comes to things like math, because they clearly said they owe 7 million, but Luffy's like, they want us to pay 70 million berries. And now he's riding on the waiver, and she's like, what? And she comes flying up on the beach and just right through McKinley's face, Blood comes out. He probably loses a damn tooth, And he goes flying back. So then they're still trying to go and play it off like it's nothing. With Conus and Pagaya. Conus and Pagaya the whole time were actually pretty cool. They were like, listen, these people don't seem like, you must be mistaken. It doesn't seem like these people are these evil, these trespassers, these these dastardly doers. And they're like, no, and then that's when obviously that, he talked about having the picture and this and that. But then he goes and he says something too about the waiver. McKinley goes and says, the broken down waiver, and he's like, and damaging a Sky Island thing is a class 9 offense and this and that, or class 10, whatever bullshit. that he comes up with. And they're like, what are you talking about? That's their waiver. You know, they oh no, well, you know, that Blue Sea people don't have waivers. So, you know, if that thing was stolen, then that's a class this and a class 9 offense. It's like, oh God, you know. So anyway, so we wind up finding out, and then McKinley goes and gets up, and even after they're trying to go and make it out like it was an accident, he knows that, you know, that Nami jacked him up, right, for a reason. So he goes and he explains that, you know, now you guys are going to be considered, these, basically the class of criminal, you know, the class that goes down, obviously, apparently, for how bad things are. But, you know, but he winds up saying that, you know, what's going to wind up happening to you is now you're going to be considered class 2 criminals, and you're going to be exiled to a cloud, a sky cloud or something like that. And Luffy's like, oh, that doesn't sound too bad. And then Conus explains, she's like, no, they basically take you and drop your ship like on a cloud with no way to get to anywhere else until you pretty much just rot and turn into bones, you know. So then Robin goes and she's like, oh, well, probably like that ship, that galleon, that's probably what happened to them. Maybe their crew got exiled or whatever, and, you know, the 200-year-old galleon, and it eventually just fell from the sky because there's really no way to get anywhere if it's like a lone cloud, kind of like I guess like an island out by itself. But clearly there's no cloud sea that you can float on around it. So anyway, that's what's going to happen to them, you know, I guess. And so Luffy's like, yes, yeah, screw that noise, man. You know, he's like, that's bullshit. So he gets all jacked up and gets ready to attack. Of course, Sanji and Zoro are ready to attack. McKinley, after he got up from getting hit in the face, he's telling everybody to ready. You know, obviously they're going to attack the Straw Hats. So Luffy kind of jumps in front of Nami, and he's like, get out of the way. Excuse me, I don't know where the hell this cough came from. And he just kind of smacks her out of the way and says, get to the boat. And then Luffy goes and like boings himself up in the air or whatever, you know, and they're like, everybody's like, whoa, a stretchy guy and this and that. As he's up in the air, he goes and he starts like spinning and kind of fluttering around like a ball, and you just see like hands and legs, and he's like, Gum Gum. And then as he comes down or whatever, he's like, fireworks, and just like just feet and legs and hands just popping everywhere, knocking guys out. These guys were firing some kind of, the White Berets were firing some kind of cloud arrows or something, Milky Arrows at them, and trying to use some of their different weapons. And although we don't really see a lot from Zoro and Sanji, we do see after everything's done, we see Zoro kind of going, you know, put his, you know, his sword back into the scabbard, and then, you know, and then Sanji kind of get, you know, basically like they just beat the shit out of everybody, because then you just see everybody laying around, you know. So that's pretty much where the chapter ends off. Things wrap up there shortly after that, because they're like, all right, whatever, let's go, you know. And McKinley goes and he's just kind of laughing. He's like, oh, he's like, now you're class 2 criminals, and he's like, you know, we were the nicest people that you would have dealt with in Godland, right? You know, now you're going to have to deal with Kami's vassals, and we can only assume that that obviously they're talking about Enel and his his subordinates that we saw, the chicken man and the guy with the dog and everything else. So, you know, those are probably like his lieutenants, you know, his guys, his bounty hunters, so to speak, that, you know, that get sent out. So you know, so definitely kind of a neat chapter, but again, like there wasn't a ton really that happened. So again, not a ton of content to cover, and there may be some like this, I don't know. So my question for you though, my chapter question is. My chapter question is, do you think that they should have just paid the fee to get in? We actually find out when they ask about, Luffy asks how much money they got, and Nami says, you know, 50,000 berries in petty cash, and he's like, 50,000, what the heck? And then Luffy's like, yeah, you know, as your captain, I say you guys spend too much money, and they're like, we spent most of it on food for you. But in my opinion, they've got to be the shittiest pirates on Earth, because I know that they do a ton of good things for people, but I mean, you know, it's absolutely ridiculous. Between Arlong Park, when they took down Arlong, I know that Nami gave all of her money, her 100 million berries, but how much had Arlong been packing away over there, you know? And to not have any money on them after everything they've done, you know, it's like you're telling me that Alabasta, Vivi, and Cobra didn't go and hook them up with a couple million or whatever to get them going. They've only been to the island of Jaya since then, and they haven't really paid for much. So, anyways, I don't know what their financial situation is. Don't really care. But my question again is do you think they should have just paid the entrance fee to get in? So would it have made any type of difference in your opinion? So knowing what you know about Skypiea that I don't, leave your answer in the comments down below. Feel free to hit the thumbs up, the like button if you should think that I deserve it, and subscribe if you have not done so already. We will look forward to catching all of you in the next One Nation. Ho 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 ho. Boobies.